I'm going to do a quick watercolour demo if anybody wants to have a look at this. It seems to be a little bit quiet today. So carrying on with the flowers project. So I'll just do a quick recap. So last week did a little bit on drawing skills. So just starting off with a very light guideline, and then a bit of structure, basically 2 circles and a few lines radiating out. And then that gave me a bit of a structure to hang the actual shapes on. So that was the first bit. I then went on, I think I did this one and this one, compositional drawing. So there was a photo that I wanted to use somewhere here. Probably lost it. Oh yeah, that one. So I thought that might be quite a nice one to base a painting on. And the idea was perhaps move 1 or 2 of the flowers around, edit a few out, and just select a few rather than all of them. And then the next stage is really just studies of individual flowers in paint. And I was really quite, I've got this book here that somebody gave me, Watercolour Flowers. I quite like that one, so it's slightly inspired by that. And what I quite like about this is you've got some quite sort of sharp areas, but some areas are slightly softer. And that's something I personally struggle to achieve in my painting. My paintings tend to be, it's all right, no worries. My paintings tend to be quite sharp, so I thought that might be quite a nice thing to aim for. So I think just individual stuff to start with. Don't worry, Jen. Thinking perhaps some of these edges are quite, I was just sort of kind of looking in a bit more detail. Some of the edges are quite soft and others are quite hard. So I'm thinking perhaps to sort of just dampen the paper a little bit in places, just with some clean water. This is an experiment really. I'll do that, see how that works. And then I'll then paint within the shapes. I'm going to start quite light. And to me this is really like a magenta colour, so it's got a little bit of magenta here, and I don't want that too strong to start with the first layer, because some of these bits are really very light. So just working that in, and it's very tempting to go quite strong to start with. Obviously we're seeing this against this real dark, but once we get the dark in there, that will look quite different. So it's just mostly water and just a hint of colour. Let's just lighten that, because that's particularly on these top edges, it's catching quite a lot of light. Pop that in. Some areas are slightly stronger, so while it's still wet, I'll just go with a slightly thicker magenta. Just pop that in places. But most of the details I'll pop in after. Some of these areas here, which I think is this one, that really is quite soft edges around there. And it's the sort of thing that you probably could do it a couple of petals at a time. That might work out better. You know, dampening a couple of petals, and then, because this will dry out fairly quickly. Bits in here. And that one there is in quite a bit of shadow. Soften that out there. And the paper's starting to dry out now, so I think I'll leave that at that. But maybe pop some of the middle bit in. So I'll use some cadmium yellow, and this is, it's not a student quality paint, so it's actually not proper cadmium, it's more transparent, which is quite nice for what I want here. And add a little bit of magenta into that, and that'll give me a nice orangey colour in the middle. And again, I'll start out quite light. And then at the bottom, there's a little bit of shadow. And I don't mind letting some of that drift into the pinks. So I'm thinking what to make that. I think a little bit of purple with that mix. So I'll make a slightly stronger mix. So magenta and cadmium yellow and a tiny bit of purple. And that makes a nice kind of purpley brown then. So these areas here, reasonably thick paint. But being watercolour, I want to keep some of the white repeat showing through. Let's go a little bit stronger in here. While that's still wet, I can soften out the marks and just try and suggest some of these little bits here. And back in with the purple mix, make that a tiny bit stronger. These paints I put out actually, I think probably before the summer, and then I've sprayed them a couple of days ago to sort of rehydrate them. And that keeps them nice and soften them up a little bit, which is nice. So here it's almost like pure pigment, not too much, and the paper's wet already, so it's diluting the colours a little bit. I didn't particularly want it to run here, but because I've got this vertical, it will run a bit more than I wanted. So while that's wet, I can just work a few of those in. Suggest on those. I think I'll probably leave it at that stage and maybe let that dry and work a bit more in a bit. I've got another one somewhere that I started earlier in the week. So that was another one, slightly smaller. So I'll do a little bit more down here. This one is already round because I had that problem of it being far too wet. Leave that sort of down there to settle. Yeah, so I'll do a little bit more of the greens around here, and maybe just some darker. It's not exactly this, it's actually that flower. So let's go back to that one. So that is actually a little bit pinker, really. But I think I'll add a tiny bit more shadow, a bit more like this one. I'll turn it into this one. Let's get a nice clean brush. And really just using the same mix. I don't want it to go very, very different, but it gives me a chance to just add a little bit more kind of definition to the petals. So really pretty much using the same mix, and because it's going over a layer already, I'll make that a little darker. And I think it adds a bit more form, really, a little bit more light and dark. Just makes it look a bit more three-dimensional. Some of these shadows. One, two, just slightly darker. That's on the edge. This bit I could probably, I'll see if I can leave that out actually. Which is something you can get a bit of kitchen roll. Ideally, you want to just put the paint down and leave it, and not go back and mess around with it. You can very lightly lift the areas down. So just a damp brush and just work into that. And then blot that out. So yeah, it's not great. It's better, isn't it? Yeah. And then should cut in around with the greens. Go back to the pointy brush. Make sure I did that. Use that one. So I've used a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of cadmium. I've got some think that's cerulean. So that should get a, yeah, that should do. So again, going in a little bit lighter to start with. Some of this I'll put other colours like purple down, and that can be quite nice. Let's do a little bit of that actually. Green's a very intense colour in that we've got a lot of receptors in our eyes for green, and it can be very overpowering. Sometimes using other colours in amongst green can be quite, you can come out with a more natural or less overpowering look. So use a little bit of purple in there. And then I'll add some greens in with that.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I've used a little bit of purple, purpley grey, just to make it the green less intense. Otherwise, it just overpowers the whole thing. Also, you've got kind of complementary colours of pink and green, or red and green as well, which it can just be a little bit too much. So it might be something you might want to experiment with. Just try. And I quite like that. I quite like that it's not solid green. At the end of the day, we're making painting, so it's what looks visually nice, really. So perhaps some lighter tones. The thing I quite like about this is, and that's the sort of thing she's done here. She's got almost like purples and blues. So there's green in the background, but there's also other colours, and that can just add quite an interesting, more pleasing look to it. Thinking a few darks, let's go a little bit dark purple and a bit of dark green. Add a little bit of purple in there. But I want to try and keep as much of the white of the paper showing through. So try and keep the colours transparent. Keep that a little bit random. I'll try a darker green somewhere else as well. Yeah, darker blue, and perhaps a little bit blue in with that. On the edge somewhere. I'll soften that out with water so that it's dark and then it merges into a lighter area. I actually think it's quite nice to just experiment. You know, that this isn't necessarily a painting itself, but I can try out some techniques rather than going to something that's very, laboriously draw everything out and then it possibly go wrong quite quickly. So perhaps build up a bit of confidence first, particularly if it's an area you're not, familiar with, like this would be for me. Okay. I was thinking next week I'll do something with oils, or it could be acrylic, but that sort of approach. I'll probably do a kind of garden or a scene with flowers in. So rather than a flower portrait, I'll use one or the other of these to do something with the oils. Just a bit more better in my comfort zone. Any questions or anything? Okay, great.